Connor Bedard reiterates he loves Chicago during his exit interview. I'll go over that and whether David Carle could be the next coach of the Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, I'll get into some news on Denver University head coach David Carle, as well as the Blackhawks exit interviews that went down yesterday at Fifth Third Arena before getting into an update on 2022 sixth-round pick Dominic James. Quick reminder right off the jump to go and hit that like button. Hop in the comment section below as well. Mailbag Monday right around the corner. Looks like we got a good number of questions racked up for this Monday, but why not add a couple of more? If you're watching this or even listening to this right now through an audio platform, can easily reach out through any one of my social media channels, email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com, or just hop on over to YouTube. Also go and hit that subscribe button and give me your question down below in the comments section. But to open things up on the show here today, Blackhawks fans, another Frank Seravalli news bomb during an intermission of the Blackhawks season finale win over the Ottawa Senators that I just haven't been able to get to on the show here today. And it has to do with two-time NCAA championship winner and two-time World Junior Championship gold medal winning head coach David Carle. And there have been lots of Blackhawks fans wondering these last few months as the David Carle rumors have picked up if Carle could be making the leap to the NHL from college hockey, and could he become the next head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks? And at this point in time, Hawks fans, I'll even talk more about this during segment 2 when breaking down all the notables from yesterday's exit interviews. But even prior to that, I think it had become abundantly clear at this point in time that Anders Sorensen isn't going to be having the interim tag removed from his label, and the Hawks will very, very likely go outside the organization to bring in their next bench boss. And according to Frank Seravalli, what we heard during the intermission against the Ottawa Senators is that David Carle from Denver University seems to be the man that the Blackhawks are gunning for, with Seravalli saying, quote, "The Hawks have had about 5 months to put their list together." Crazy to think it's been 5 months since the Hawks fired Luke Richardson. But Seravalli said the Hawks have had about 5 months to put their list together, and there's one name at the very top that's circled, and that's David Carle. However, Blackhawks fans, what I do have to say right off the jump before we go and get too excited, because I know Carle is a very popular option based on what I've been seeing in my comment sections. He's someone that's definitely intrigued me. Since there have been kind of this discussion about him potentially making the leap to the NHL. However, we know the Blackhawks are not going to be alone in wanting Carle to be their next guy. The Philadelphia Flyers obviously are going to be in the search for a new head coach. The Boston Bruins, possibly the Pittsburgh Penguins, the New York Rangers, and probably a couple more other teams are going to be in the mix as well. But even more so than that, Blackhawks fans, there's still the question lingering of whether David Carle will even leave Denver. We know he's not going to be coaching the United States at the World Juniors in 2026 in an attempt to go for the three-peat. That sure makes it seem like he's leaving the path to the NHL open. However, he hasn't officially declared that he's going to be leaving Denver just yet. And he recently had an interview with Frank Seravalli on his Daily Faceoff podcast and basically said unless it's a life-changing opportunity in a place that really aligns with his vision, there's no absolute must for him to leave Denver. He's in a really good spot, one of the best programs in all of college hockey. If he wanted to, he could be there for a long, long time. However, you got to think, even though he is only 35 years old, becoming a head coach in the NHL, it's the highest accomplishment that you can have in that career. You would think naturally David Carle would want to make that jump. I still feel that's more likely than not going to happen this offseason, whether it's to the Blackhawks or not. But it's not officially set in stone at this point in time, and it's really going to depend on whether the situation feels like a good fit for David Carle. So we know the Blackhawks want David Carle. Frank Seravalli said as much so, and I think it's a really smart idea for the Blackhawks to try and get this going sooner rather than later. The real question, though, Blackhawks fans, is will David Carle want the Blackhawks? What's the Blackhawks pitch to get David Carle to sign on with them? Well, the Blackhawks have a lot of things going in their favor for sure. Number one, there's a chance for David Carle to come in at the ground level with prospects that, by the way, he's already familiar with a lot of these guys, right? Coached Frank Nazar at the World Juniors, coached Oliver Moore, Sam Renzel at the World Juniors, Aiden Thompson in Denver, played against Wyatt Kaiser in college, right? Like he's got experience with a lot of these prospects that are crucial to the Chicago Blackhawks rebuild. And he's also very familiar with these types of players, being someone who's been at the college level in one of the best programs. His job has been to get kids ready to go transition to that next level while also playing really good hockey in the NCAA, right? So he's very familiar with the development path. He's aided in that as a college coach in his career, and I think that's someone the Blackhawks would like to have as their next head coach, someone who could still help in that development while also having winning mentalities that can transpire out there onto the ice. I think this would be a very comfortable spot for David Carle and be surrounded by players that he's familiar with, right? Also, I think the Hawks, compared to some other jobs, won't have the highest level of expectations right out of the gate, which again, this will be David Carle's first NHL job at just 35 years of age, should he elect to leave Denver University this year. While it is the Chicago Blackhawks, and I'll talk about that here in just a second, there's not going to be the pressure for him to go into this organization and win immediately. Yes, we want things to turn around. Yes, we want the Blackhawks to start doing some more winning, but it's not like if Carle would to come in this next season, he has true Stanley Cup expectations or anything like that. I think it would be a great opening spot for him in this league where he doesn't have the weight of the world seemingly on his shoulders when he comes in. Also, as I mentioned, the Chicago Blackhawks, they're an Original Six franchise, a great sports city. I know, obviously, everything that's gone down in the last decade and a half surrounding the Kyle Beach stuff and what happened with Corey Perry. Say what you want, but this is still an organization. Nick Foligno, the captain, has even talked about this so many times, a first-class organization that goes out of their way to treat players well. And again, an Original Six franchise where people care. People support this team through thick and thin. I think that's something that definitely cannot be underestimated. Then there's also the great prospect pool that the Blackhawks possess. We got to see a lot of that at the end of the season in the NHL, and there's going to be more of these kids on the scene the next few years, as well as a slew of draft picks still in the Blackhawks' back pocket. And then they got tons of money to spend on free agents to help go and make this roster better, and they also got a ton of money to spend on David Carle for his contract as well. So there are a lot of things working in the Blackhawks' benefit, and I think a lot of reasons David Carle would consider this Blackhawks job intriguing. And I think this is a really good opportunity for David Carle to get into the NHL again in a situation where it's a prestigious organization. I'm sure he'd be honored to coach this team, but also at the same point in time, it's not do or die right here, right now. He has a chance to come in and help build this thing from the ground floor. And I do think that's something that David Carle, I don't know him personally, obviously, but I do think that's something that he would be intrigued by because it still has a similar feel, I think, to what he's been doing in Denver in terms of helping develop this next group of Blackhawks players while also getting an opportunity to coach at the highest level. I really do believe it's going to be a good opportunity for David Carle. We know, as Frank Saravalli said, they have him circled. They're going to make a good run at him. And as I just outlined, they have a lot of money to go and throw his way and entice him with in terms of the free agent market these next few years to help make this team better. I think it's a really good spot for David Carle. I think there are a lot of reasons for him to truly consider the Chicago Blackhawks if he's going to be leaving Denver University this year. We're just going to have to see if that winds up happening, but sure seems like the Blackhawks know who they want as their next bench boss. We'll see if they can make it happen with David Carle. I'll keep you all updated on any of the latest David Carle news we get here throughout the offseason as the Blackhawks coaching search really begins to ramp up. But coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, after getting through my thoughts on the latest David Carle news, coming up in just a moment, I'll get into the key takeaways that we got from yesterday's exit interviews down at Fifth Third Arena. Real quick, Blackhawks fans, I got to talk to you all first, though, about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. It's 250 extra bucks that you can use on everything, from buzzer beaters to early round upsets, and even who's lifting the trophy when it's all said and done. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out on this incredible offer. Again, it's $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you got to do is head on over to FanDuel.com right now and claim your $250 worth of bonus bets today. Segment 2, I was going to do my end of season award show here on the show today, but admittedly forgot about the Blackhawks exit interviews that went down at Fifth Third Arena yesterday, and we got lots of noteworthy takeaways and comments from that. So let's go ahead and get on into them. First, we got to start with none other than Connor Bedard, who I actually believe spoke first during the exit interviews yesterday. Obviously, with the Blackhawks doing a bunch of losing again this year, there have been a lot of people wondering, a lot of hater speculation that Connor Bedard isn't too happy here in Chicago and could be wanting out after his entry-level contract. Honestly, if you were someone who thought that or do still think that, odds are you're probably not a Chicago Blackhawks fan or haven't been truly watching this team from start to finish to understand what is trying to be accomplished in this situation right here, right now. And it was very vindicating nonetheless to hear what Connor Bedard had to say about this topic yesterday, even though all of us true Blackhawks fans knew any of those gripes or rumors or whines were complete BS. Bedard, though, addressed this topic to the media saying, quote, "I've said it 100 times. I love it here. I want to be here for a long time. If I look a little sad on the bench, people sometimes take it out of context. People who know me know that I love being here." And by the way, Connor Bedard is eligible for his extension off of his entry-level contract come July 1st, and doesn't seem like there's going to be any issues getting that extension done, which for any Blackhawks fan who had some slight concern about Bedard potentially wanting out of Chicago, it's not going to happen. And the biggest thing for that too, Blackhawks fans, the biggest reason why it's like, if you really believe Connor Bedard has been disgruntled or has been frustrated, you don't really know what you're talking about. A perfect example of that is Bedard showing like he has understanding for the situation. And this is what I've been talking about all year long whenever like these types of things have come up. Bedard even said so himself. He said, quote, "If you get the first overall pick, you're probably not winning the cup the next 2 years. It's an understanding of where you're at. When you lose, it makes winning a lot sweeter once you get there. So we're excited for that. If you get the number 1 overall pick, you're probably not turning it around in a hurry." I love to see Connor Bedard understand that. I love to see Connor Bedard address these comments to the media to shut up a whole lot of Vancouver Canucks fans for the next couple of years. But I also just thought there were a lot of Bedard quotes to really show how mature he's been over the last year and a half, and also to show how much he truly does enjoy being here in Chicago, speaking about how cool it was to see all of the young kids on the scene come together at the end of the year, saying, quote, "With the young guys coming up, there was so much positivity surrounded by it, especially at the end of the year. It was great to see a lot of guys' growth and see what the future can hold." But the biggest noteworthy quote that I got from Connor Bedard yesterday, Blackhawks fans, well, yeah, it was important for him to reiterate how much he loves it here in Chicago and how he enjoys being part of this young group, building up together and watching all of these guys make their debuts, guys who are hopeful will be puzzle pieces here in Chicago. The one real quote that stood out to me the most was about his recognition of where his game is at and what he needs to improve upon to help take it to the next level. He talked about his speed in particular, Blackhawks fans, saying, quote, "I don't think I'm slow, but probably kind of average speed. I'm not ever going to be McKinnon or McDavid or anyone like that, but if I can gain another step, it puts guys on their heels a little more. And with the way I think the game, that could be a huge plus for me and help me create more." And I love that recognition from Connor Bedard because honestly, I couldn't agree more. I do believe that is the biggest thing that he needs to work on in order to help take his game to the right level. And I think that was a perfect assessment. He's not a slow skater, but he's also not a difference-making skater in you can tell with Frank Nazar and Ilya Mikheyev, like Connor Bedard just doesn't have those types of wheels. And while I don't expect him ever to be like Nathan McKinnon or Connor McDavid, I mean, he's the best skater in the entire league, probably the best skater we've ever seen in this league. I don't expect Connor Bedard to get to that level, but I also think there's definitely room for improvement because even thinking about Nathan McKinnon coming into the NHL, he was a better skater than Connor Bedard coming into the show, but he also definitely wasn't the level of skater that he is right here, right now. Like those are still things you can improve upon as a young player, especially acceleration, that first burst, right? And I truly believe those are things that Connor Bedard can still improve as a 19-year-old. And if he can get faster, like he said, with the way he thinks the game, with his creativity, with his hands, with his goal scoring prowess, that's just going to open up so many more doors for him because the defenders are going to have to respect that speed a little bit more. It's going to put them on edge and be a little bit more unsure of how to go about handling Connor Bedard in a defensive manner. So I love to hear Connor Bedard recognize that, hey, I kind of need to work on my speed to get it to another gear to help me open up more things in my game. I couldn't agree more. And if Connor Bedard can work on that skating, and like I said, I still believe he can improve in that department at his young age. I was really happy to hear that. I know he's going to put in the work with his work ethic, and excited to see if that's going to come to fruition these next couple of years. Keeping my fingers crossed if so, because look out if that is the case. But lots of other noteworthy topics that we got from yesterday's exit interviews, Blackhawks fans. I do want to get into a quote from Kyle Davidson here next, revolving the Blackhawks coaching search, since I just talked about David Carle in segment 1. And by the way, Blackhawks fans, go jump in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on David Carle. Do you want him to be the next Blackhawks head coach? Do you have concerns because he doesn't have NHL experience? Go and give me your full 2 cents below in the comment section. And again, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy what you're watching or listening to on a daily basis. But GMKD talked about the Blackhawks coaching search during his exit interviews yesterday, saying that the organization would definitely like to hire a head coach much earlier than they did in 2022 when they hired Luke Richardson in mid-June. So, like I mentioned during segment 1, they want to move fast here. Seems like they know who their guy is. We're still not 100% positive of what coaches are going to be on the market. We don't know who's going to be fired within the next couple of weeks potentially, but sure seems like the Blackhawks, if they're not going with someone who's currently hired by an NHL franchise, they know who they want, and they're going to start making runs at it here pretty soon, although they have not held official interviews at this point in time. I'd expect that to start here over the next couple of weeks, and if I had to guess, Blackhawks will have a head coach probably right around the NHL draft lottery right after that. So beginning of May, next couple of weeks after, if I had to imagine. Also, Davidson, when talking about the kind of season that it was for the Blackhawks, he admitted it wasn't the year that they were hoping for, but the finish definitely was positive. And he mentioned that the veteran-led roster that the Blackhawks opened the season with, and it just didn't end up working, and clearly they weren't clicking. There was no offensive upside, no speed for this group whatsoever, and as a result, they had to make some changes. They had to make some trades. I mean, that happened a little bit later, but they obviously had to fire Luke Richardson, so that made things a little bit tough for the Blackhawks, but because of the lack of success that this veteran roster put together at the beginning of the season, Davidson said he's going to be more careful and more selective with the roster additions here in the offseason. And that's music to my ears, because for those of you who were following, listening, watching my shows last summer, then you know I wasn't really happy with the Blackhawks free agent additions. I didn't love the Teuvo Teravainen signing, even though he had a phenomenal season from December out. I still don't really think he's enough of a game changer to help make a true difference for this Blackhawks roster. Tyler Bertuzzi, I thought the contract was horrible. That 4th year, I did not like whatsoever. The TJ Brody contract was horrible, right? Alec Martinez played well when he was healthy, but I think he only played 45 games. It was not a very good free agency for the Chicago Blackhawks. And while Kyle Davidson has done a lot of good things in terms of drafting and acquiring draft picks and capitalizing on his leverage in terms of the finances, one area that has kind of eluded him up to this point in time, and I do think the Blackhawks being in the position they're in and not being a contending team also has to do with this, but make no mistake about it, he hasn't been very good in the free agent market. He's definitely got to do a better job this summer than he did last. Also, getting into Ryan Donato contract updates. I talked about that yesterday. Donato, in his exit interview, said that he would like to re-sign with Chicago and that they actually got close on a potential extension near the deadline, but it's also a business and he definitely wants some security in his next deal. So we'll see. It seems likely that the two sides come to an agreement. And what I will say is I've been outspoken about the Blackhawks giving him 3 years, how that personally wouldn't be my preference. If they do sign him at $4 million or below, or even if it's like $4.25 million at 3 years, that's a good bargain in my opinion. Although I have a hard time believing, even though Donato says he wants to re-sign with Chicago and enjoys the opportunities he gets here, I still get an inkling that someone's going to give him $5 million in the offseason. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see what winds up happening there, but Donato seems like he wants to get a deal done with Chicago if they're willing to give him a little bit more financial security. Then next we get to Anders Sorensen, who, as I mentioned during segment 1, I will be touching on him and his future here in Chicago. Pretty clear that he's not going to be getting the permanent gig. He's not going to be having the interim label removed from his name tag, but it does sound like he's willing to remain a part of the Blackhawks organization. And this was a big question that I had throughout the season. Will Anders Sorensen want to remain with Chicago if they do not give him the head coaching position? Sure seems like he's willing to, and I don't know if I was in that spot, if I'd necessarily be that open to remaining here, but not exactly sure what role Sorensen is going to have if he winds up sticking around. I personally would like to throw him back down in Rockford. Again, I don't know if he'd look at that as an insult after being an interim NHL head coach. However, he's clearly in a little bit over his head in that position. So Rockford, where he worked on development with some young guys, and when the young players came up to the scene at the end of the year, the Blackhawks did a lot of good things. I think that's the right level for Anders Sorensen at this point in time as a head coach. We'll see if he's willing to go back to being the bench boss for the Piggies in the AHL again. One piece of final news that I want to get into before two final quotes to send you all in segment 3 with a little bit of a smile on your face. Laurent Brossoit, the biggest mystery on the Blackhawks roster. Haven't seen him all year long. I don't even think he's suited up for a practice. Davidson did say they're hoping Laurent Brossoit will be healthy for training camp next season and will compete for a roster spot, which makes things really interesting because obviously Spencer Knight's going to be the number one. Drew Commesso had a really strong finish. Well, I guess the season's still going on. He's had a really strong last couple of months down with the Rockford Ice Hogs. Arvid Soderblom closed out the season on a high note. He's a pending restricted free agent. Do the Blackhawks want to go and bring him back, have him compete for the backup NHL job with Brossoit and maybe Commesso as well? The Blackhawks goaltender position gets a little murky if they do bring back both Brossoit and Soderblom. And hearing Davidson say they want to bring back Brossoit to give him an opportunity makes me question what their plans are for Arvid Soderblom in the long term. I'll talk more about the Blackhawks pending UFAs and RFAs in an episode here coming up real soon. But two final quotes that I wanted to get to, Blackhawks fans, to put a smile on your face before we move into segment 3. The first one comes from the captain, Nick Foligno. Really good quote about the opportunity the Blackhawks have right here, right now in this rebuild. Foligno said, quote, "The cool part of sports is when you have an opportunity to build it from the ground up. These young guys have realized that, and I hope they come in next year with that attitude and a little bit of swagger. This is their team, you know? As much as I am the captain, this is their team, and I know that. It's exciting for me to hand it off to whoever and know it's going to be in great hands." And I just think that's, one, great veteran leadership from Nick Foligno, and two, also great recognition. Like, yeah, he is the captain here. He is the head honcho. But he understands the bigger picture of what the Blackhawks are trying to accomplish, and it's not to win next season, and it's probably not going to be to win while Nick Foligno is here. But he's okay with that. He understands what he signed up for, and if anything, he just kind of feels honored to be at the helm of it right now, knowing what kind of special things are on the horizon for this organization, and understanding that it is these guys' team. They are kind of starting to understand that, I feel like, with the amount of young players that are coming onto the scene, and they're getting to build that together. And it's almost like Nick Foligno is like, as an older guy, part of the coaching staff or part of the front office watching this all happen, because he knows, these guys are the future. It's not me, but I still have to do my part in making sure they get there in the best possible manner. So I thought that was really cool from Nick Foligno. And then there was also a cool quote from Kyle Davidson as well after he talked about how the season, as I've mentioned, Blackhawks fans, I talked about it yesterday, like all in all, it wasn't the type of progress that we wanted to see from this Blackhawks team, even though they were 9 points better than last year. We didn't make the strides that we wanted. However, Davidson talked about how he just can't not be happy considering the position they're in. He said, quote, "I don't know how sitting in my seat, I can't be optimistic where we're headed given what we saw towards the back part of the season." And he's 100% right. As a host of this Blackhawks podcast, I don't know how I can't be encouraged about the direction of this organization based on what we saw in those final few weeks. Frankie Nazar, Connor Bedard, Sam Rinzel, Oliver Moore, Artem Levshinov, Kevin Korchinski, Spencer Knight, Ryan Green. The list goes on and on and on. And then think about some of the other special players that are going to be joining this organization over the next few years. Think about the second overall pick that the Blackhawks, maybe even the first overall pick in the 2025 NHL draft. Yes, it's taking a while, but there is something special brewing here in Chicago, and I love to see Kyle Davidson, Nick Foligno recognizing that, Connor Bedard recognizing that in his exit interview, Frank Nazar recognizing it as well. It really feels like even though it was a rocky ride these past 6 months, what transpired over the last month or so when all of these kids came onto the scene together, it left everyone with a positive taste in their mouth moving into this offseason. I think everyone's intrigued and encouraged by the direction this team is heading in. Hope we get there sooner rather than later. It's going to be a big offseason for that to happen, Blackhawks fans. Starts with bringing in a good next bench boss, which again, they're gunning after David Carle. We'll see if they can make it happen. But there are all the noteworthy quotes and takeaways from yesterday's exit interview down at Fifth Third Arena. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, before I close out today's episode, I'll get an update on 2022 sixth-round pick Dominic James. But first, I got to talk to you all about Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. And with 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So head on over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On in order to get started today. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire Stick TV 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Wanted to say thank you real quick to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen, here to start off your day. For your second listen, go and check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, up until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned, you can now get local analysis on a national scale with the coverage you love from Locked On. And you can easily find Locked On NHL Game Night right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, during the final few weeks of the regular season, of course, we saw numerous prospects sign their entry-level contracts. Oliver Moore, Sam Rinzel, Ryan Green, Tage Harding down in Rockford with the Ice Hogs. But one guy who didn't, Blackhawks fans, was 2022 sixth-round pick Dominic James out of Minnesota Duluth. And Scott Powers of The Athletic actually wrote up an article about this probably about a week ago, right around when Ryan Green signed his ELC and Aiden Thompson inked his entry-level deal as well. By the way, Aiden Thompson, another guy part of that group. Scott Powers of The Athletic wrote up about Dominic James, how his senior season ended, and the Blackhawks gave him the same entry-level deal that they gave the rest of their college prospects whose seasons came to a close. However, James hadn't ultimately made a decision on what he was going to do. Well, Kyle Davidson, during his exit interviews yesterday, sure made it seem like Dominic James will not be taking their entry-level contract and will hit the unrestricted free agent market here this summer. And for those of you who aren't really all that familiar with Dominic James, kind of understandable. He was a 6th-round pick back in 2022, played the last 5 years for the University of Minnesota Duluth, had his season last year cut short due to injury, was the captain of the Bulldogs here this season, wound up tallying 30 points in 35 games, 14 goals, and 16 assists, was the leading scorer on the team. Also has represented the United States at the World Juniors in the past, but not really a ton of NHL upside with Dominic James. He's a good skater. I do think he has the ability to play the center ice position at the professional level because he's a good skater, plays a good 200-foot game, has good goal-scoring abilities, kind of capped upside as his playmaking isn't really all the best, doesn't have the most, his hands have a hard time keeping up with his feet, but he does make an effort on the defensive side of things, and that was actually his role for the United States when he did play at the World Juniors. Good speedster. Could have maybe been a 4th liner at the NHL level, but that even seems a little bit unlikely. So it's a little disappointing that he didn't sign with the Blackhawks, but it was going to be a long shot, I think, for him to make the NHL as a full-timer anyways. But Kyle Davidson said they gave him a, quote, pretty damn good opportunity coming out of Minnesota Duluth. And, you know, while it is a little bit of a crowded forward group and just a deep prospect pool in general for the Blackhawks, maybe that steered James away and maybe he wants to take his chances in a prospect pool that isn't so deep. That's his right to do so if he chooses. I still feel like it would have been a good opportunity for Dominic James to, like all the rest of these kids, come into the Blackhawks organization and help grow together. And based on Kyle Davidson's comments, seems like the Blackhawks were at the very least offering James an opportunity to sign his ELC and go join on with the Ice Hogs on a tryout for the remainder of the season. If not, then come on to the NHL scene with the Blackhawks. Like, based on KD's comments, feels like they were giving him an opportunity to go and play pro hockey right here, right now. He just ultimately wanted to choose his own path, I guess, as he makes this leap to the pro level. That's his right to do so. Kyle Davidson even said no ill will towards the kid, but a little disappointing to hear that Dominic James is not going to be rising to the ranks in the Blackhawks organization. Not that I spent a ton of time covering him these last couple of years, but a little disappointed that happens, but it's the nature of the business, the name of the game. We'll see where Dominic James winds up. No ill will, like I said, wishing him all the best. But he's not going to be signing his ELC here in Chicago like we saw many prospects do from the NCAA scene here late in the season. But that's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way, you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Till next episode, everyone, have a good one. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.